Moving into our new home was an adventure in itself. Sarah and I had spent months planning, packing, and finally settling into our cozy little house on the outskirts of town. It was a quaint place, with a picket fence and a garden bursting with colorful flowers. We were filled with excitement and anticipation for the memories we would create in our new abode. As the days passed and we began to feel more at home, Sarah suggested we take a stroll around the neighborhood to familiarize ourselves with the area. I readily agreed. The idea of exploring our surroundings with her by my side filled me with joy. The sun was beginning to set as we set out on our walk, casting a warm golden glow over the streets. We walked hand in hand, chatting and laughing as we admired the houses and gardens we passed. Everything seemed so peaceful and serene. As we turned a corner, something caught our eye: an old, dilapidated building at the end of the street. It stood out starkly against the backdrop of neatly manicured lawns and well-maintained homes. Its windows were boarded up, and ivy crept up the walls, giving it an eerie, abandoned look. Sarah nudged me, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Should we check it out?" she asked, her voice tinged with excitement. I hesitated for a moment, feeling a flicker of unease at the sight of the decrepit building. But the sense of adventure won out, and I found myself nodding in agreement. "Sure, why not?" I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Together we made our way towards the old building, our footsteps echoing in the stillness of the evening. As we drew closer, I couldn't shake the feeling of foreboding that washed over me, but I pushed it aside, telling myself it was just my imagination running wild. We reached the entrance of the building, and I paused, hesitating for a moment before pushing open the creaky door. The air inside was musty and stale, and dust motes danced in the faint light that filtered through the boarded-up windows. Sarah squeezed my hand reassuringly as we stepped inside, her eyes shining with excitement. "This is so cool," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. I forced a smile, trying to quell the rising sense of unease that gnawed at me. Deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that we shouldn't be here, that we were trespassing on something ancient and sacred. But Sarah seemed oblivious to my inner turmoil, her curiosity driving her forward as she explored the darkened corridors and abandoned rooms. I followed closely behind, my senses on high alert as we ventured deeper into the bowels of the building. And then suddenly it happened. As we turned a corner, a strange noise echoed through the empty halls, a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. Sarah froze, her eyes widening in fear as we both stared into the darkness ahead. Before we could react, a figure emerged from the shadows, a twisted, grotesque creature unlike anything I had ever seen. Its eyes gleamed with malice as it fixed its gaze upon us, its lips pulled back in a snarl that revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. I felt my blood run cold as the creature lunged towards us, its movements swift and predatory. Instinct kicked in, and I grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her towards the nearest exit with all the strength I could muster. We ran as if our lives depended on it, the sound of our frantic footsteps echoing through the empty halls. I could feel the creature hot on our heels, its breath hot against my neck as it closed in on us with terrifying speed. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature was gone, disappearing into the darkness as if it had never been there at all. We burst out of the building, gasping for breath as we stumbled into the cool night air. We didn't stop running until we were safely back inside our own home, the adrenaline still coursing through our veins as we collapsed onto the couch in a heap. Neither of us spoke for a long time, the memory of our encounter with the creature too fresh and too terrifying to put into words. But as I held Sarah in my arms, her heartbeat steady against my chest, I knew one thing for certain: we would never forget the night we stumbled upon the old building and the nightmare that lurked within its walls. The days that followed our encounter with the creature were filled with a palpable sense of unease. Neither Sarah nor I could shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the darkness that had pursued us from the abandoned building still lingered, waiting to strike. We tried to carry on with our lives as normal, but it was impossible to ignore the lingering sense of dread that hung over us like a dark cloud. Sleep became elusive, our dreams haunted by visions of twisted shadows and flashing teeth. I spent hours scouring the internet for any information that might shed light on what we had encountered, but all I found were myths and legends, tales of monsters and demons that seemed too fantastical to be true. Sarah, meanwhile, threw herself into her work, burying herself in endless projects and deadlines in an attempt to distract herself from the nightmare that had invaded our lives. But I could see the strain taking its toll on her, the dark circles under her eyes and the tension that crept into her voice whenever the subject of our encounter was mentioned. And yet, despite our best efforts to move on, the memory of that night continued to haunt us, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of our reality. It wasn't until several weeks later that the true extent of the creature's influence became clear. It started with small things, misplaced objects, strange noises in the middle of the night, but soon escalated into something far more sinister. Sarah was the first to notice its strange bruises that appeared on her skin seemingly out of nowhere, accompanied by bouts of dizziness and nausea that left her weak and disoriented. At first, we dismissed it as nothing more than stress or exhaustion, but as the symptoms worsened, we knew something was seriously wrong. I took her to see countless doctors and specialists, but none could offer an explanation for her rapidly declining health. It was as if whatever had pursued us from the abandoned building had sunk its claws into her, draining her of life and vitality with each passing day. I felt helpless, powerless to protect the woman I loved from whatever malevolent force was stalking her. And as the days turned into weeks, I watched helplessly as Sarah's condition worsened, her once vibrant spirit fading away before my eyes. But even in the darkest moments, there was a flicker of hope, a glimmer of determination that burned bright in Sarah's eyes as she faced her illness with courage and resilience. She refused to let the darkness win, fighting tooth and nail for every moment of life she could cling to. And it was in those moments of fierce defiance that I found my own strength to stand beside her, to fight alongside her, no matter what horrors lurked in the shadows. Together, we faced the darkness head-on, refusing to be consumed by fear or despair. And though the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty and danger, we knew that as long as we had each other, we could overcome anything that stood in our way. For love, as we soon discovered, was the most powerful force of all, a beacon of light that shone bright even in the darkest of nights, guiding us through the depths of despair and leading us towards the promise of a new dawn.